I don't think there's anyone else that would have this information. So I'm going to give you what I have. To speak to the private country club, I just knew it was on North Street. It was owned by the members. I was very active. I knew people that worked there as back then they called them waitresses. They didn't call them wait staff, they're waitresses. In fact, my best friend and her daughter used to work there. The membership got in trouble with being able to support the place, and they sold it to a fellow named Chuck Angelopoulos from Lynn. He owned a place called Mans in Lynn. He's still around. And the agreement, from what I was told, was that he had agreed with the membership to keep it a private country club for 10 years. But shortly thereafter, he went into an agreement with a construction company who's, I'm trying to think of their abbreviations because it's very similar to the company we hired. And the company we hired to run the golf course almost did not get hired because they thought they were aligned with this company. As it turned out, it became a fiasco. The membership, I believe, sued him. What happened was in 1986 that he was going to develop the property, single home units, and the property is 144 acres, I think. 110 is the golf course. The property goes out onto Pluff Ave, which nobody ever sees. There's a number of acres out there. If you go down Main Street to where the Dunkin' Donuts is, take a right and go all the way down, and there's a gate, and you go down there, you'll find acres and acres of untouched land that the enterprise, the Hillview, and the town owns. So anyways, 86, the word was around that he was going to develop it. I spoke to one of the selectmen by the name of Jerry Brooks at the time. And he said, well, they'd heard a rumor, they'll look into it. And then in fact, it was something that he had gone into a partnership. So sometime in 86, I was asked if I would join a group of people to investigate whether or not it would be in the best interest of the town to take the property because it sat on our aquifer, which is now a moot point because we don't use well water anymore. And today we would not have been able to take the property. So we have a group appointed by the selectmen at the time. There were 5 selectmen. Well, 3 of them were called the Three Amigos. They were very much aligned with each other. They used to meet at Dunkin' Donuts all the time on Main Street and Park. And it was always a happening because the transcript at the time came out the night before and everybody would run to get the transcript to see what was happening. So anyways, fast forward, we get organized, 7 of us, we get appointed as a study group. We meet at what is now the library. It was the old town hall, a decrepit old town hall. And we would go up to the top of the building and not into a room, but into like a balcony overlooking the staircase. And we met there for close to a year, just about every single night. And the group consisted of a lawyer who had been town council, Walter Billows, who lived abutting the golf course. And another lawyer was Jim Sr., who was very active in the town. And his wife, Rosalie, was not a select person at the time, but became a select person and was chairperson. They were very instrumental in shepherding through the legality of what was going to happen. Walter Billows was sort of a connected fellow politically, and he sort of did the stuff with our representatives because this was all going to, if we did it, have to go through state legislature and all that stuff. And we had a fellow named Bill O'Brien who seemed to have a way with numbers, and he was our treasurer. Fran Hatchie, who is presently a member of the commission, but was gone for 19 years, and that's another story I'll get into, He's an engineer. We had the police chief, and we had a construction guy, a fellow named Mike Walsh, who had his own business. We set it up so that it was very specific to talents, lawyers, as you get the patent, lawyers, construction people, plumbers and stuff like that. People who knew what they were doing with the property. Then there was me. I was always called the people's commissioner because I had none of those talents. I'm a teacher. I had no idea about all those stuff, but I could do research. So we met, and we met for, as I said, close to a year, and we did a presentation to the town at a town meeting in 1988. We did a presentation in 1988, I believe. This is all documented. So, and we presented the pros and the cons, and then we ended up by saying the risk not to take it is greater than the risk of taking it. So, in the course of that time we had met, there was very little contact with Mr. Angelopoulos. He was sort of a mystery to us. We dealt with his law firm, Latham and Latham, out of Reading. And one day I wanted to meet him. I was sort of out. I had a real thing about taking someone's property without meeting them. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to tell you face to face. So we had him come in, and he was sort of a belligerent person. And needless to say, it was the vote was 7-0 to take the property. In the course of our meeting, there were different scenarios that Latham and Latham would present to us. Mr. Angelopoulos would suggest. First, it was the 140 units of single housing. And then there was a negotiation, obviously, with he and his attorneys, and they determined what they would do is they would use 9 holes of the golf course and allow the town to run the other 9 as a public 9-hole golf course. And it would sort of be a cluster type of happening around the other 9. That was rejected. So finally they came back with the, I think it's, is it 30B? 30B is the low income. I forget, 30 or 40B. I think it's 30B. But 40B? Okay, well, that's whatever it is. And we kind of knew it was not going to happen. It was not going to happen. And we also understood that the sense we were getting that they did not want to go to trial for whatever reason. I have my own personal feeling about it, but that's for me. So they didn't want to go to trial. So they decided not to go to trial, taking eminent domain. Never do it today. It's based on the value of all the surrounding properties. So at that time you had Country Club Road, Pomeroy Road, and you had the homes along North Street and along Central Street, but none of them fit into the footmark of today's homes. So the value was much less than it would have been today. So the two streets down in off of Central Street that abut the property, which would have been key to the did not exist at the time. Lantern Lane, and I forget the other one, but Lantern Lane and those. So anyways, the court ruled the town could take the property, and the vote at the time was, I don't know, it was out. It was like 99.75% of the people at town meeting, which had was the old high school, had an overflow full in the cafeteria, and we started the process of taking the property. We had to deal with his attorneys, of course, and we had to deal with, we had hired an attorney. We had asked the town. We did not want to use the town council because of a very specialized type of real estate. It's a real estate deal, a very specific type of real estate deal. So we hired a fellow, I believe his name was Desimone. He has been around a while. I believe he did work against the town lately. So, but all that can be researched. I have all that information back at home. And he had a partner, and they were good, and we got it through anyhow. The total cost was $6.8 million at that time. You can imagine what it would be today for 144 acres, but it was 6.8 million. Again, that has to be, can be verified, but I'm pretty accurate. Of that, we were offset with a $1.5 million grant, self-help grant group that was out of, his name was Joel Lerner, and we became his model because we are very unique. We're the only town that has the arrangement we have with our enterprise. All of the money in the enterprise has to be used for the, well, at the time, protection of the aquifer, again, which is now a moot point, open and active recreation and expansion of the enterprise, which became an issue unto itself on interpretation of what means expansion. Did it mean expansion only within the confines of North Street and Central Street and Pluff Avenue and along the border of the Stop and Shop property? Or did it mean going off property? So anyways, that in a nutshell is how it happened. There was very little opposition there. I mean, a couple of realtors, I opposed it. At that time, there were only like 5 realtors in town. Now there's hundreds. So it was a different time, you know, different era, and everybody was on the same page. And, you know, you had 3 solid votes in the Board of Selectmen. The town manager, his name was Fairbanks at the time, he kind of disappeared. He left town. He left town and sort of resigned. I believe he resigned. I don't even know if he resigned. And a fellow by the name of Dick Spindler, who was the director of Department of Public Works, became the acting town manager. And he also was very aligned with the 3 fellows I mentioned. And they were all in favor of it. They didn't want to see that property. It was really just a magnificent piece of property, and it still is. So we took it. We took it in February of 1988. Our study group was 1987. Took it in February of 1988. And we were in April. Free cash loan from the town. And that is the only, I would call, tax money that has ever been expended on the Hillview. And we paid it back within 2 years with interest. So it was a clean slate. What it did, it allowed us to put the property out to bid. We got, for the golf course, we got numerous bids. Some were unrealistic because it's based on a management agreement as opposed to what is very popular, lease agreements. Whereas the lease agreement, the company would say, give the town $400,000, and that's the end of it. And then they're responsible for everything, even the equipment and everything else. But you know, if they make $2 million a year, minus the 400,000, minus their investment, minus their employees' pays, they get the rest. And you know, we're now into our 35th year, and over 35 years, that can be very lucrative. So we didn't go that route. We went the route of a management agreement that is basically a management fee. Built into it are incentives of percentages over the years, and that contracts public knowledge way back when, and we still use the same model. So we selected a group called Golf Facilities Management out of Lynn. There were two young fellows who were working at a Gannon golf course. They were both civil service employees. One was by the name of Mike Foster. He was the golf professional. And the superintendent was a fellow named Steve Murphy. And they formed a company called Golf Facilities Management Incorporated. So they came on board by 4-3 vote. Their closest competitor was cheaper, but I was the swing vote, and I just had a feeling, and I liked the honesty and the upfrontness of Golf Facilities Management Group, especially Steve Murphy, and I voted for them. So 4-3, they come in. Now we have a building over there to put out to lease. And we put that out to lease, and we probably had at least 15 responses. Some of them were very unrealistic. One fellow was going to pay us $300,000 a year. We knew that could never happen. We require them to come into meetings with their staff, like a chef, their general manager. Some produced them, some didn't. Some came in for the first interview with no one, came back with people. But when all was said and done, we hired a fellow by the name of Burton Page, who his family owned a number of Hilton hotels, and they also owned the golf course, which is now Marketplace in Linfield. And it was in fact, my daughter got married there at his golf course, Colonial Country Club. He in turn came into us because they had decided to rid themselves of the hotels for whatever reason, internal. And then they decided they would sell the Colonial Club. So Bert Page came in with culinary arts and had been running their hotels and their restaurants and stuff. And he came in and he brought with him a cadre of older people. They were called M&Ms. There had to have been 300. And they would come every Thursday night to these M&M dances where they would meet each other, and they'd come to dinner first, and they'd dress to the nines, if you know that term. And yeah, they'd be in gowns, and they'd be in, just really dressed well. Sometimes they'd park their car out in the middle of North Street because they had no idea, they're older and they didn't know where they were, and they were parking. We had to get them to move cars. Well, that population passed on, of course. Burton stayed with us for 26 years. He was very good, and then he got ill. And then we brought in a fellow by the name of Pat Lee, who owned the Horseshoe. And that didn't work out that well for us. And after 5 years, mutual agreement was not to renew the contract. So the building sat empty. It was dark, as they say. And Karen can tell you my zealousness to get that building running. And I got a call one night from someone who told me that Teresa's in Middleton might be interested, and he also had bought the right-hand side of the Thompson Country Club from the members who owned it. Tony, and his name is Karen Teresa. Why am I having a brainstorm with that thing? Yeah, Nick Eva. So the Thompson Country Club is still viable on the left-hand side of Allen Street, but the golf course is actually owned by the tenants, and the people that are members there have leased it for umpteen years, and they bought their own. But they did own the property across the street, and they sold it to Mr. Eva. Well, he came in, and sad to say, that also didn't work. And after a period of time, he left, and the building sat empty for a bit until we reached and came to a company called Ultra Chic, which to me was interesting because they're not restaurateurs, they're events planners and things like that. And they had a vigorous business going into hotels and function places, and basically doing the setup of how their population would want it set up. And they were working out of their garage and storage sheds. And they came to the Hillview, and we interviewed them. And I thought I saw something in them I really liked. And Karen can tell you, it's been a journey, but they've been with us now a year. Things have worked out. It was very difficult for them to understand about municipal government, dealing with inspectors, dealing with not being able to do things they've always done. And but it's worked out now, and they do plan to open up the restaurant. So I see a long-term relationship with them. Now back to the golf course. The golf course is the money generator. The building is, you pay your bills, you pay what you have to do, you take care of the septic system, you take care of the grease traps and stuff like that. You're on your own. We trust you. We get a percentage of what you do plus the rent. Major renovations, major repairs are our responsibility. Yours is to do the rest of it. The golf course, on the other hand, is different. With a management group, we become responsible to purchase all of the equipment. We become responsible for all of the repairs and things that happen on the golf course. Example, both of these, the GFMI has a lease agreement with the town of Beverly, the city of Beverly and the city of Lynn. So if they have, even though they're the managing group and have paid $400,000 to the town, say, if they have major issues on the golf course, both cities have to pay for those. The way we're set up with the enterprise, and we have to pay. With the management group, we have to pay. Example, a few years back, we had a breakdown of our irrigation system. And the irrigation system is like the blood that runs through your body. If it clogs up, if it stops, you're out of business. The grass goes brown. You don't have any watering. So Steve Murphy, who has been in the business a long time, had a connection, and he knew there was a company that from Colorado that was up in Maine doing was supposed to be doing it. They did a big irrigation system on a golf course up there, and the next job was canceled. So the fellow had a crew of all these workers in Maine waiting to go to the next job, which was somewhere south. So contact was made, and they came down, and they did an emergency $1 million irrigation system for us that would have cost more if it had gone out and been anything other than emergency. The point is, we have won that $1 million. So our lifeline is the golf course and bonding. So back to 1992. 1992, there was a group called Land Utilization Commission that was created by the moderator at town meeting. And they sort of became a clearinghouse for us because, you'd have people coming into us looking to do all kinds of things, and you had to be selective on what you did, okay? So we would have people come in and just tell them we couldn't do it and stuff like that. Well, a group called the LUC, as I said, was formed. And after a year or two, they came in, and the Hillview was successful. Our worst fears, which we really didn't have because we were taking over a pristine country club. And it was a matter of just advertising that this is now a public golf course. And we had an expert who had owned by Mr. Flynn, who owned the Thompson Country Club at the time. And he came in and gave us advice. First thing he told us was get rid of your swimming pool. It's a liability. Don't have tennis courts, and don't ever have members. They're nothing but trouble. So we followed his advice, but he was not interested in doing business with us because he didn't like the way it was set up, where the town would get all the money. So back again to the LUC. They come in, there's a piece of property down on Central Street, a big farm, very active farm when I first moved into town in 1970. And they knew the man was leaving, retiring, whatever you want to call him. It's called the Drinkwater property, and drink right down there. And they presented a proposal to us, and we thought it was a good idea, but it was one of many proposals that had come to us. And one day at a meeting at Town Hall, people were supposed to come in and make their presentations to the town, the people. And everybody made their presentations, and the Drinkwater property was very appetizing. It caused some angst in the town amongst the Board of Select people at the time, Select Board, who thought they should have heard about it first, which they didn't. Technically, I guess they're right. I never get into that stuff. And it caused a tsunami of my members being removed one by one. Till one day I was the only one standing. So that's why I've been around so long. In the course of all of that, I did get one member back after 19 years of an absence named Fran Hatchie. He had been removed. So when I was back to the Drinkwater property, it was a great idea. The proposal was for us to fund $2 million bonding for the people, the LUC, to again, another real estate deal. Everything we do is a real estate deal to purchase the property, and we allowed the group to run with it, to do whatever they wanted to. They've done a great job over all of these years. You see how it's flourished. You see how it's grown. A very zealous group. And the joke was they were responsible to pay the bond. And one day we decided that they couldn't afford a pavilion down there, which was for protection, lightning and all that. And so we gifted, we used the word gifted, $60,000 for them to build the pavilion. And we also removed the bond from them. And the joke was, how many cupcakes can you sell? You know, how many cakes can you sell? So we assumed the bond for that. And then it just became a great thing in town. We obviously couldn't do much at the time. There was a reach out to us to have have all of the school fields put under the enterprise, and have our company, which was the manager we had awarded the bid to, Steve Murphy, to take over, and their company would become responsible for taking care of the fields. Of course, that had a very quick death to the fact that so many people were employed and union members and things like that. So that never got off the ground, but that was kicked around. And so fast forward, the Ipswich Park became great, but it sort of shut us down for a while. Years later, we were approached to fund a project called the, I don't know what they call it. It's up off Oscar's Way. It's a walking trail. It's a walking trail. The people came to us, the group that was pushing it, and stated that all of these people had donated their land to them. And if we would support it and put it under the enterprise, we're reluctant to do it. And we sort of didn't do it. My philosophy has always been, you do for the greater good. You know, I don't want a walking trail where there's no parking, there's no fields. It's a neighborhood thing, and I'll always refrain from that. So I was opposed to it. A number of us were opposed to it, and lo and behold, it backfired because they purchased someone's property, and then the dominoes fell. So we were smart in washing our hands of that. The turf field, which became a whole different issue years later, the group came to us probably for years and years, and we were not in a position. You know, we pride ourselves on our business acumen, that we always have our finger on the pulse. We've had great treasurers over the years, and we just got 2 new members, one of them being a person with financial background. So we rely heavily on that person to guide us with the purse strings and when you can bond, can't bond, and do stuff like that. Well, they came to us, and there was an appetite in the town to put in a turf field. It became a contentious thing in the sense that some people thought it was a general government project that the Hillview was funding, which under our enterprise, we're not allowed to fund any general government funds. Any general government projects, none. So we okay it. We vote to spend $2 million to purchase the property that is now the turf field. And the perimeter is the fence on Central Street, and the fence that goes around the grandstand. And it's very spelled out. Again, another real estate transaction. In the meantime, somebody reported us to the Department of Revenue for funding $2 million bond for general government. And I was on the phone. The town manager at the time kicked it to me. I was chairman, and I had a discussion of over 2 hours with a woman by the name of Maura O'Neill. And Maura O'Neill and I convinced her that when we knew what we were doing, we've never done anything that was outside the parameters of what we're allowed to do. And we would never do anything that would put the enterprise in jeopardy or the town in jeopardy. Well, she was convinced it was okay. So lo and behold, we get a $2 million bond. We buy, and that's the important thing. We buy from the school department the property they own, which is now the turf field and the stands around it and the track. There was no noted over to the school and recreation to come to a memorandum of understanding, which was a job in itself, because there was a little taffy pull between the two of them. And I just remember saying at one meeting, I come bearing $2 million of a bond, and if you guys can't get it together, we have other people that want it. So what happened was they came to a memorandum of understanding, and the thing has been, great. And they also get all the revenue. The enterprise gets nothing in revenue from that structure, and that's a whole different issue on planning for future and all that stuff. So we do what we do. We still do it. We just have. I've been very fortunate over the years. I've had wonderful, wonderful people. Sometimes you have trepidation because you're not sure that the people who were with me at the beginning, we were very zealous. We created it. We saw it long term. We saw it as a gift to future generations. And it's been maintained the way it was from the beginning. People come on. Karen will tell you, I'm a little zealous. I always get into trying to present to them the history, but the older I get, the more I understand history is for me. So now I pigeonhole or highlight what I think is important for people today. And what's important for people today is understand that we're still only here to provide open and passive recreation, maintain the golf course, maintain the building. We're presently looking at probably a $500,000 to $600,000 bill to replace the roof on the country club portion. We have architects coming in to give us some direction. We had to bring a fire engineer in to give direction to our new tenant on what they can do and can't do. We maintain the golf course. Over the 35 years, we've spent in excess of $18.5 million in bonding, things the town could never have done. They could never have done it. I will say we have had some issues with some folks who thought that they should be in lieu of tax payments. We have done that a couple of times in our 35 years. I opposed it back a long time ago. I opposed it recently, a few years back, and I oppose it now because it was never meant to be. The sole purpose of the enterprise was to produce quality of life for the generation when we started it and future generations. And I always tell people, if you have a dream, if you are zealous about something, and we can help, come forward. Come forward. That's who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be people that are like the bankers, and we assume the note, and we don't anticipate anything from you other than fulfilling, the mission, although they didn't use that back then, but the mission that we started out with and keep going with it. And if you go into the building, the country club part, as you enter the building on the left, you'll see a plaque that names the selectman, the acting town manager, and the original members of the commission. And we just say it's a gift from our generation to future generations. Now, what future generations do with it afterwards, I don't know. It's morphed into an expensive proposition, much more than it was when we first took the property. What other people will see it, but there's penalties involved for the town if things have happened. I'll give you an aside. You've heard of this multicultural center. Well, the multicultural center is something that a woman by the name of Margie Salt, who was on the original LUC, looked to do way back when, 30 years ago, trying to get funding, trying to get state funding, federal funding. It never happened. Rita Mullen, you're all familiar with, is very involved in that. A fellow named Ken Tarr, who was chairman of the LUC forever, who moved out of town, is no longer involved. He was really hung up on it all. He did the farmers markets at down at Ipswich River Park and all that stuff. So they're looking to come up with a scenario to get a community center on Central Street, where you see the house, and they've sort of looked at that property, and I had to be the person that told them there's covenants on that, what we have. The Hillview is very protected. The enterprise is very protected. If you want to put it there, then you have to give the Department of Revenue rulings, and there's precedence for it. You have to give equal value of property that is not swampland, that does not have to be developed. It has to be property equal in value to be used for open space and recreation, And it's very specific, very specific. So that's where we're at right now. So did I take enough of your time?
George, sorry, let me just say thank you right off the bat. I don't know if Karen has anything in addition, but thank you. That was pretty great.
I see Carolyn in the background. Hi, Carolyn, if she doesn't hear us.
You're on TV, dear.
Oh, no.
So what I will do, you know, I have other notes and everything else, but I would look to expand. I'm very into giving people their just due. You know, I mean, these people worked really, really hard over the years. You know, when we had I call it a purge of the commission, and I was the only one reappointed, I had great trepidation about the people coming in, because I didn't know what their feeling was or what they were told about the people who came before them. But they all bought into it. I haven't had, I haven't had anybody place another commission who didn't buy into it and became not as zealous. There's never going to be anyone as zealous, but committed, very committed to the whole project. And that, you know, and that's what the state calls it. The state calls the enterprise and the Hillview the project. So when they address it, they don't address this as the Hillview, they address this as the project. I mean, that's just a technicality, but you know, and so many of those people are gone now also. We're very controlled by the Department of Revenue. We were very controlled by the Department of Environmental Protection, but no longer having the aquifer. The only well water we use now is for the golf course and stuff like that. So it's a cliff note, introduction to the Hillview, the enterprise, the town, the mood of the town, and at the time, all of the stars are aligned. You know, with the selectmen, the townspeople, the revenue department, and the fact that we were still a small town without these mansions. You could never, the town could never have afforded, or the Hillview, because the town's only on the hook for anything with the Hillview if it collapses. Well, we paid off the bond. We've paid off the Ipswich River Park. We're just about ready to pay. Our bonds are ready to be drop off, and we're going to be looking to bond the building itself, the roof. So everything we do is expended through the enterprise. We've never gone to the town for anything other than the initial $250,000 upfront money to seed money to get the golf course running, because even though we hired the people, they weren't going to work for nothing. So, and we paid it all back, as I said, within a couple of years with interest. So, and any questions?
No, I think, George, I think you did phenomenal. Without me even guiding you, you gave us a very nice timeline and that is giving us plenty of jumping off points. And I think at some point when you come back and we'll start moving into more regular interviews with you, we can start to expand on some of these topics.
Yeah, and I have people that you should speak to.
Yeah.
I don't have any knowledge. I don't know anybody. I do have a friend I might be visiting down here who was a member of the Hillview at the time. It was a private country club. I didn't know any people. It was sort of an isolated place, and it was really I think most of the people were from out of town. You know, it was a very I don't know anything about country clubs, but I just know there's you might not know who James Garner is. Karen knows who James Garner is because she's seen the picture.
Yeah.
Come on. Bill's a movie guy.
Rockford Five.
Okay. Well, their office is a picture. And Chuck was here at that time. So I do have people when we maybe get to a round table thing. But as far as the inner workings of what happened at the town hall, all those meetings ago, I have the information. Fran does, but I ask Fran sometimes, and he's going back, because again, he was gone for 19 years. So, but that's it. It was a one lifetime opportunity, as Karen can tell you. We're spending golf course that has kind of been set aside for everything else we've done. That's coming out of our reserve. As I said, we're going to be funding probably $500,000 to put on a flat roof, but we never were able in a position to fund it. So everything is done at the same time. Where it goes, I don't know. I mean, where it goes with costs escalating the way they are, our golf pro used to be able to bring kids in 14, 15 years old and pay them $5 an hour to police the place, pick up rubbish and everything else. And he'd give them, free golf. Now he has to pay them $15 an hour. So that's changed. The contract changes. The contract is escalating. Your revenue, the only way you get revenue is you have to keep raising prices. But I'm a great believer that there's a top of that mountain, because then people have too many choices. Right now, we don't give them a lot of choices because we always stay below the market. But once we get to the tip of the scale where we go either to the market or above the market, it becomes a different type of animal. So we'll go from there. Okay. So, all right. Anything else?
I think it's a good pausing point for today. Like, we can pause at this point because your Wi-Fi is starting to get a little choppy anyway.
I never pause, Karen. So
I know. Well, that's why I'm encouraging the pause.
No, listen. You're lucky you got this from me. This place is not really wired.
Yeah.
I'm on my neighbor's. I'm on my friend's Wi-Fi next door. But anyways. So and also I would hope that we could come out and take a tour of the Hillview.
Yeah.
And make sure that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I could give you a history. I'll give you a quick aside. The sewage system they're talking about in town.
Yeah.
Well, that's been being talked about for years.
Yeah.
And they've brought out companies to check on the effluent, I guess they call it, when it changes into the water, where you dispose of it. And there's a number of places in town they looked at. And one day I got a call that these geologists, I don't think you were with me, Karen, at the time.
No.
The geologists would show up. So the geologists all showed up, and I took them and we walked the golf course, and they were just so excited. And the sewage system and where all the excess is going to go became secondary to their excitement about the great glacial formations on the Hillview.
Oh, cool.
From 2,000, 3,000 years ago. And of course, then I never heard another word from them, because obviously the storage thing got into a hold, and I don't know what they're going to do now. I mean, now they're going into storage and all that stuff. So I don't know. But anyways, anything else? Where I live, Karen?
Yeah, no, I think,
If you-
I think that's a great,
Just-
yeah, you
just
gave us
phone me.
the Cliff Notes version. You gave us a great Cliff
Yeah.
Notes version to get going.
Yeah, it was very, oh, I meant to tell you, the birds used to fly around their heads in the old town hall, by the way. That's how bad the town hall was. Best thing they ever did was make it the library, so
Hmm.
anyways. And I'm glad that the Damon Tavern's being used. I didn't know that's where you were.
No, we've been here, maybe a little over a decade we've been here, like 11 years.
Have you been there 10 years?
Well, rough, maybe even 11 or 12.
Right, okay.
I've been working
Is the
for-
big mural still there?
I've
Is the
been-
big mural still there?
So here, yeah.
The mural, yeah.
Oh, the mural.
Okay.
Yeah. The mural is still up there. They've done, I forget if they repainted or touched it up a bit, but they had to, as you probably know, it's a very weird place because they can't necessarily put like fire suppression sprinklers or anything.
Right.
Check if it's like,
Yeah.
the mural, and it's also horsehair, so it's like that
Yeah.
weird thing. But they've
Yeah.
done a bunch of updates and it's been kind of nuts.
Yeah, okay. Well, the Hillview's thriving.
Oh, good.
Um,
Yes.
And again, the next thing probably is dealing with the intergenerational center and stuff like that
Yeah.
through the enterprise. We move on, okay? We move on.
Yeah.
And as I said, all of the members I've had over the years have been really committed. That's the big thing, a commitment. And no one's tried to cut corners. No one's done anything that, they shouldn't, which is really good, really good. So anyways, okay, Karen, anything else?
No, tell Carolyn we might want to interview her too for what her time was during that
You
year
really
in
want-
1987, and then some.
You really want to, huh?
Yeah.
If she wants.
Okay, well, she'll tell you, I should have had my mail sent there. So anyways, it's a pleasure meeting you, Phil, correct?
Likewise, George. Thank you for your
And
time.
Karen, enjoy Florida.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. All right, we'll talk to you, okay?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So-
Bye,
Take care now.
George.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye-bye.
Carolyn.